Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Congressman Scott Peters' telephone town hall tonight. My name is Mary Ann Pintar, and I'm Congressman Peters' Chief of Staff. Congressman Scott Peters represents California's 50th Congressional District, and he currently serves on the House Energy and Commerce Committee as well as the House Budget Committee. Tonight we have two special guests joining us. We'll be joined by Congressman Joe Neguse from Colorado, and we'll also be joined by Neguse Patel, who is the Federal Policy Manager for Democracy Forward. We had hundreds of sign-ups for tonight, and I think we dialed out to many, many more. But we will be giving top priority to those of you who reside in the 50th Congressional District. To ask a question, please press *3. We'll do our best to address all the subject areas from the pre-submitted questions and your questions as well. We won't be able to get to every question, but we'll do our best to get to all the subject areas. At the start of your question, please tell us your first name and what community you reside in. For example, I would say Mary Ann in University City. Some other housekeeping items for tonight: to subscribe to our weekly newsletter and receive updates on Congressman Peters' work and what's happening in Washington, D.C., as well as what's happening here in San Diego, please press *6. So to receive our newsletter, please press *6 and someone will help you get signed up. Also, if you'd like to leave a message tonight, stay on the line after this call and someone will be available to take your message. I'm now going to turn the event over to Congressman Scott Peters and our guests.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Thanks, everyone, for joining. As Mary Ann said tonight, our special guests and I will be focusing mainly on the legal challenges to Trump's actions in office. Over the past couple months, we've had thousands of contacts from constituents in my district who are really worried about the direction of the country. As you know, the president has issued a fire hose of executive action in an effort to flood the courts and overwhelm Americans' ability to follow along. Some of the executive actions are meant to be distractions, like renaming the Gulf of Mexico, which is irritating, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But I'm going to focus on those executive orders that are blatantly illegal and the ones that hurt people in San Diego. We should start by saying that everyone wants to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse from our government. But Elon Musk and Donald Trump are not going about it in the way that any of us would if we were trying to do this in our household or in our business. They are using a sledgehammer or a machine gun with no regard for what they're cutting. They fired nuclear scientists in charge of safety. They fired the incoming director of NIH's Alzheimer's research program, cybersecurity experts countering China's hacks, disabled veterans working remote jobs, engineers employed by Navwar here in San Diego. I can tell you that story. And today we heard that they're going to fire a quarter of the workforce at the Department of Health and Human Services. There's no plan behind that. It's just something that they're doing for show and for politics. Now, President Trump campaigned on lowering prices, and in the election, people were concerned about inflation. And in San Diego, people struggle with high prices for housing or groceries and childcare, and a lot of people were persuaded to vote for Trump for that reason. But instead of working to lower costs, he's pushing policies that raise costs for all Americans. We've got tariffs on Mexico and Canada, which are our trading partners in the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement that Trump negotiated and was proud of. Now he's turning his back on that agreement and our allies and assessing tariffs, which are effectively a tax on Americans. They'll be paid by American companies, those tariffs, and those companies will have to pass those costs on to you. He's also pushing a tax plan through Congress that will increase the federal debt and give tax cuts to people who don't need them instead of helping those struggling the most. So increasing the debt means the government needs to borrow more money, which leaves less money to borrow for small businesses, housing assistance, food assistance, veterans health care, other services that working families and everyday Americans depend on. This all results in higher prices for you. So I'm working with House Democrats to push back on these actions, including supporting lawsuits. We'll talk about that tonight. Writing legislation, leveraging my relationship across the aisle to convince just a handful of Republicans to break with their party. I very much appreciate from hearing you. We've certainly heard a lot from the district. And if you ever have an experience where something you're working on is affected by what's going in Washington, we want to know about that because we want to tell that story. So please reach out to our office to see if we can help. So we have a special guest tonight who's a terrific leader, my friend and colleague, Congressman Joe Neguse from Colorado. Congressman Neguse is the assistant Democratic leader. He's the number 4 Democrat in the House. He also chairs the House Democrats Litigation Task Force, which leads and coordinates our legal effort to rein in Trump's abuses of power. So Joe's going to give us an update on the legal fights against President Trump's illegal action. Joe, thanks so much for being with us tonight, and I'll hand it over to you.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Representative Peters, for the kind introduction, for the invitation to join you, and for convening tonight's important conversation in Town Hall. As Scott mentioned, I have the privilege of serving as the Assistant Minority Leader in the House, which means I have the privilege of working alongside dedicated members of the House Democratic Caucus and getting to know the members who represent our country in the House of Representatives well. And there is no one fighting harder, in my view, than Representative Peters, who's been an integral part of our efforts to push back against the litany of unconstitutional and unlawful executive orders that have been issued by this administration. As Scott mentioned, Leader Jeffries, roughly 4 weeks ago, created the Litigation Task Force as a central clearinghouse for House Democrats, for us to leverage the talents and expertise that exist in the caucus, including, of course, from Representative Peters and others, to be able to formulate legislative and legal strategies to respond to the unlawful agency actions that this administration is pursuing and ameliorate the harm that is being caused to the people of San Diego and Southern California, the people of Colorado that I have the privilege of representing, and indeed folks across our country. The silver lining with respect to our efforts thus far is that we are succeeding in court in pushing back against this administration's unconstitutional efforts. And I will give you just a few examples. As I am sure many of you are already aware, there are over 100 cases pending in federal courts across the country, across 14 states. And in many of these cases, the overwhelming majority of these cases, the Trump administration has failed in defending the propriety of its actions. In many of these cases, federal district court judges appointed by Republican and Democratic presidents alike have issued temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions against the administration's executive orders. A few examples include the Office of Management and Budget's illegal funding freeze, the President Trump's illegal and unconstitutional executive order regarding birthright citizenship, as well as a plethora of other actions that the administration has taken over the course of the last 8 weeks. And House Democrats, through this task force and the leadership of Representative Peters and others, have been engaged in this litigation on behalf of our constituents and the American people, working to vindicate our Constitution. One example that I would offer is the case of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, an agency that was first conceived of in the wake of the 2009 financial crisis and the Great Recession, an agency that's designed to protect consumers from predatory practices, and unfortunately, an agency that President Trump has sought to unconstitutionally dismantle. There was a lawsuit filed against the administration's efforts to dismantle the agency, and House Democrats made the decision to engage in that lawsuit by filing an amicus brief in the case. And just 5 days ago, a federal district court judge ruled that, in fact, that agency's efforts, or rather the OMB's efforts to close and dismantle the CFPB unilaterally, was in fact unlawful. And the district court cited arguments that we made in the brief that I just described. House Democrats will continue to find ways via this task force to engage strategically in the litigation that is developing across the country, as well as pursuing legislative remedies, which of course Representative Peters is leading among others. Above all else, I know that this is a scary time for so many folks who are tuning in this evening. It is a perilous moment for our country and our republic, and it's one that requires all of us to be engaged, which is precisely why I'm so grateful that so many folks have joined tonight's Town Hall. And I hope that many of you will contact the task force with your ideas and suggestions, which you can do by visiting litigationandresponse.house.gov. Thank you, Representative Peters, again for your leadership and for convening tonight's Town Hall. And I'll turn the speaker back to you.
Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate your leadership on this. And obviously, we're going to be leaning heavily on the courts to do the right thing. So far, they've held up, and so far we've won a lot of cases that are really going to be important to the American people, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that with our next guest. Just as a reminder for folks who want to ask a question, if you want to ask a question, please press *3, and you'll be added to the line to ask questions. So we're also joined by Megha Patel, who is the Federal Policy Manager at Democracy Forward. That's a national legal organization that's been directly involved in many of the legal challenges against the Trump administration. Megha, why don't you tell us a little bit about the work Democracy Forward is doing, and then we can have a little bit of a discussion about some of those cases.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Congressman, for the opportunity to join you today and the people of San Diego. My name is Megha Patel. I'm the Federal Policy Manager at Democracy Forward, like the Congressman said. We have been on the front lines ever since the inauguration. We actually filed a lawsuit at 12:01 as the president was getting sworn in. We've been filing litigation and winning in court on behalf of nonprofit organizations, veterans groups, houses of worship, federal employees, unions, and more. To date, Democracy Forward and other partner organizations have filed more than 140 lawsuits against 50 EOs and actions. Democracy Forward itself has filed more than 40 legal actions and launched 70 investigations since January 20th, securing major wins and bringing together a unique coalition of more than 450 organizations to address this administration's harmful policies. Democracy Forward has challenged the abrupt discontinuation of funding for essential services, DOGE, invasions of privacy, attacks on DEIA, and the targeting of our nation's nonpartisan civil service. And the good news is that we are winning in the courts. Like both congressmen said, we've blocked the federal funding freeze. We've been able to block ICE and immigration enforcement operations within houses of worship. We've obtained the first mass reinstatement of civil servants. We've secured court-ordered discovery and fact-finding against DOGE. We've actually got a significant ruling where the Social Security records that were accessed by DOGE have to be deleted and disgorged. And that was significant because we've never seen anything like it. We've filed a Department of Education lawsuit that prevents the dismantling of the department. And then we also have filed a case against the Alien Enemies Act, which the president has invoked a wartime authority. And let's be clear, we're not at war right now. So we've just been on the front lines trying to make sure we are winning and using our actions to prevent anti-democratic efforts from moving forward. I will turn it back over to the congressman.
Megha, I have a question for you about something that's really peculiar here and really troubling. And it's a notion of something called impoundment. And what that means is that the president takes the position that he does not have to spend the money that's allocated in the budget. The problem with that is, the Congress is assigned the power of the purse under Article 1 of the Constitution. And we do a budget deal with the president where we negotiate over what spending levels will be for all these various things. Sometimes the president wants a higher level. Sometimes we want a lower level. Sometimes on another issue, we'll want a higher level. The president will want a lower level. But we come to an agreement at the end of the day, and we expect the president to honor that agreement and spend the money that we've allocated, not more and not less. Richard Nixon tried to take the position that he didn't have to spend what was allocated, that he could effectively impound those monies and sort of give himself a line item veto, really. And in the 1970s, that was resolved. Is one of your cases about that? And I know we've had some success early on in freezing his ability to make cuts to the budget we've agreed on. But can you talk a little bit about that and what you see as prospects for how that gets resolved by the courts?
Absolutely. So currently we do not have a case on impoundment, but that does not mean we won't in the future. We are looking at all of our legal options and working in coordination with 400 other organizations on this issue and many as well. But like you said, Congressman, this is a law. Congress has the authority of the purse, and so this is illegal, which will be met with in the courts. And we will be working diligently across our civil society organizations to make sure that this remains in place, Congressman.
Yeah, thanks for that. See, one of the things that it sort of breaks the whole Congress if we negotiate over appropriations, reach a deal, and then lo and behold, the president can do what he wants. It really eviscerates the power of Congress and checks and balances. So it really doesn't work. Marianne, I'll turn it back over to you. You've got questions from folks.
We have a lot of questions already on the line, and just to remind people listening tonight to ask a question, please press #3. For the first question, we're going to go to Diane Davis from La Jolla. Diane, you are with us. Are you able to? You are able to ask your question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you. Please go ahead with your question.
My concern is all these suits against Trump are great. We're winning in the courts appropriately. I do not have a sense that he is going to follow the direction of the court. For example, a judge told him not to send those people to Guantanamo or to El Salvador. He did it anyhow. What can you as Congress people do to stop him, to make him follow what the judges are saying?
Diane, that is the big question, isn't it? And I know we haven't reached that point yet, and I'm going to ask Mega to comment on this in a second. But we have the power of the purse. We have the ability to do appropriations. The thing we don't have is we don't have the control over the apparatus of law enforcement. And I got to think that at some point, all of us are going to really rebel at the notion that this president does not have to follow the law as it's interpreted by the Supreme Court. So I do think it's going to take a Supreme Court ruling. I do think it's Trump's own Supreme Court that's going to have to tell him you're out of bounds. And I hope we don't reach that point. On the particular issue you raised about the migrants on the plane, that itself raises legal issues that are going to be decided by the court. That's not been adjudicated yet, but I think that certainly went farther than I've ever seen a president go, and I share the concern that you have. Mega, what do you think about the prospect of the president not obeying the rule of law as announced by the judicial system?
Yes, absolutely. And this is a great question. We have been seeing that his administration has been following court orders for the most part. Now, what happens if he does not? And we have seen, an instance or two, and the judge came back and filed a stern ruling on this. And another thing that the courts can do is hold these lawyers in contempt. They can ratchet up each time that they disobey an order. They can ratchet up disciplinary actions, and it could go all the way to criminal contempt. It could be civil contempt. There's many options that exist in the judicial system. So we will, be on the front lines of that fight as well. But right now we want to focus on the wins that we're getting and the fact that the administration has been following the orders for the significant majority of the time.
Thanks, Meg. I mean, obviously, we're all concerned about that. And I know we have a pre-selected question. Marianne, are you looking at the one about private law firms?
I was just about to get to that one. This is a question from Kathy in North Park. She wrote in advance of tonight's telephone town hall and asked, can you clarify how the administration is threatening private law firms and how that attack on the courts can be addressed?
Yeah, let me just say before we go to Mega, I am just appalled by this. This is a time when, we need the bar, the lawyers and judges and retired lawyers and law professors across the country to be standing up for the rule of law and to be standing up to intimidation. And we've seen some of the biggest so-called toughest law firms in the country just fold up and make these deals and capitulate to Trump. He's threatening to remove security clearances from lawyers who need security clearances to do their jobs with the government. He's threatening to cancel government contracts. He's threatening their clients, and it is entirely inappropriate. But it's the kind of thing where the bar has to stand up, and where everybody capitulates. It threatens one of the real foundations of the republic and the democracy, which is everyone's respect for the rule of law. He's already been talking. He's already been denigrating judges, talking about impeaching judges who make rulings against him. I mean, that will never pass. But when Elon Musk is giving campaign donations to members of Congress who pledge to impeach lawyers who rule against the president, that's the kind of intimidation that really interferes with justice in America. And justice that we've developed, the justice system we've developed over centuries that now is the envy of the world. And by the way, is a predicate for doing business here. Businesses like to do business in the United States because they know they can trust the courts. Mega, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, this is an egregious attack on our legal profession, from all across the spectrum. And so we've actually created a letter and have sign-ons to send to the Attorney General Bondi regarding these unlawful attacks that we are seeing currently happening. We've worked across the aisle and across the spectrum of lawyers in their views, but we all agree that this goes against the Constitution. And so we've had about 4,500 people sign on, and we're planning on sending this over to the Attorney General to answer some questions and say, we are deeply concerned about these attacks, and we want to be sure that we will be protected and that everyone has the right to fair representation, which is a pillar of our country. And we'll be on the front lines of this. And so if there are more attacks and more attacks continue, Democracy Forward will not back down, and we will be working in tandem with Congress to make sure we meet the moment. As we know that without a fair and free courts, we cannot have a fair and free country. So that is our promise to constituents across the country, that we will be meeting this moment with our toughest legal strategies we can.
Thank you, Mega. I think that we are going to take another question from the callers, Scott, and then we may move over to our poll. But the next question is from Alan Bailey in City Heights. Alan, you are live on tonight's telephone town hall. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you. So go ahead with your question to the congressman.
First of all, I like the format. This is the first time I've ever heard of this, so this is pretty cool. But my question is, we're like $2 trillion in debt the wrong way with our budget. So, what's the plan to start balancing our budget and start paying down some of the debt?
Well, I really appreciate that question, Alan. This happens to be something that I've worked on for the last few Congresses. I'm the Democratic chair of the Bipartisan Budget Forum, which is an effort to work with both parties to reduce the national debt. So the national debt is now more than $36 trillion. That means that the United States holds more than $105,000 in debt per person. And that's accrued for a lot of ways, but the debt is the total, but it's fed by every year's deficit, because we're not paying our expenses as we go. We're borrowing $2 trillion every year now just to pay the bills. So it's really out of control. What I want to say, what DOGE is doing is not the answer, because it's really for show. Like, you see DOGE coming after the federal workforce. You should just know the federal workforce in total is only 4% of the federal budget. So that's just not going to make a dent. If you cut a quarter of the workforce, you'd lose a lot of capacity, and you'd only be gaining 1% of the federal budget. That's just not going to do it. So we have to work together with both parties, because you can't do this one party. One party may want to just spend. One party may just want to tax. It's got to be what Clinton and Gingrich did, which was they did a deal where they balanced the budget. Half it was revenue increases, half it was spending cuts, and that's the kind of thing we need to do. But it's not we don't have a revenue problem, we don't have a spending problem, we have a borrowing problem because they don't match. So I have called for the creation of a fiscal commission, which would be comprised of sitting members of Congress and outside experts with a balance in parties that could identify and evaluate tax increases, opportunities for spending reduction, and other ways to reduce borrowing. I don't know a way to do it other than that. I think putting us in the room and making us face facts is the right way to do it. I think, the Republicans crow about common sense. You can't just cut taxes, which their tax plan would add $4.5 trillion minimum to the debt, and then say you're concerned about the debt or the deficit, while you're doing this show, this political theater of Doge. I mean, we just heard terrible stories come out of Doge, but none of it is directed at really getting the government to work in a fiscally responsible way. Just a couple stories I'll tell you from when I was last in San Diego. I visited Moore's Cancer Center. Moore's Cancer Center has a clinical trial going on where people are, participating to find new cures for cancer, and they decided that they would stop funding it. They would just stop sending the money our way. And at a point in time, Moore's Cancer Center was faced with the decision of having to cancel the whole trial. So in the name of waste reduction, you would lose a whole clinical trial, and that's just dumb. I visited a military facility where we're trying to hire away really smart young people from Google and from Apple and the private sector, people who know about cybersecurity and artificial intelligence and communications, and we get them to do it not because we pay them more. We don't. We pay them less, but they want to be patriots. And we had just heard the day I got there that they'd all been laid off. So we lost the capability of those young people to protect us and our families. And we also lost credibility as an employer. This is what they're doing in the name of eliminating waste. It's a huge waste in and of itself. It's not what we want to do. So that's a long way of saying we need to get in a room in a bipartisan way, figure out the right cuts and the right revenue increases. Because if we don't, by the way, this notion of you keep cutting taxes until your kids are stuck with a bill and they pay all the taxes. So it's just a cruel game that they're playing with us in this big tax cut bill that they're planning. It's not the way to do it, and cutting the federal workforce in this way is both wasteful and it's never going to be enough.
Thank you, Scott. In the same line of questioning or the same subject, we have a poll for all of our listeners tonight, and I'm looking at the numbers. We have thousands listening to this conversation tonight, and thank you all for joining us. Just a reminder, if you want to ask a question tonight, please press *3, and someone will help you get into the queue that I can get you on the line with the congressman. But before we do that, we're going to ask a question of all of you. The question is, do you think Elon Musk and unvetted Doge employees should have access to your Social Security number and bank information? Answer yes, please press 1. Answer no, please press 2. If you are unsure, please press 3. Again, the question is, do you think Elon Musk and unvetted Doge employees should have access to your Social Security number and bank information? To answer yes, please press 1. To answer no, please press 2. If you are unsure, please press 3. While we collect those answers, we're going to go to another question from the queue, and this is the next question is from Alan Bradshaw from Carmel Valley. Alan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we can hear you. You are on live with the congressman on our telephone town hall, and you feel free to ask your question.
Well, this kind of tails onto what was asked about Elon Musk. I'm just, it baffles me why he has the access to our most sensitive personal information, why they're able to take it out of the confines of the government onto a largely non-secure platform like an AI platform, and what's being done to stop him. around?
I'm going to ask Mega if she's got. I think she's got a lawsuit on this as well. But look, we publicly called for Congress to subpoena DOJ to answer under oath what they're doing with your private data. There's a real concern that, in addition to it just being sloppy and potentially leaked, that they would use it for commercial purposes. I mean, this is a man who's made a lot of his money with federal contracts, and there's a lot of conflicts of interest that we don't know about with him. That I have to fill out all sorts of forms, conflict of interest forms. Everyone who works for the federal government does. We know nothing about Elon Musk and his interest in this, why he's snooping around the Department of Defense, and why he's taking personal data, perhaps for his own purposes. So we're going to fight it in Congress. We're going to fight it in the courts. And like I said, one of the things I do is I do talk to my Republican colleagues about cracking down on this, and we only need a few of them to break with us. So I have some good relations with some of them. I think a lot of them are uncomfortable with what's going on. Right now they're a little bit more uncomfortable with talking back against Trump, but we'll keep working on that.
Yes, and thank you, Congressman, for highlighting our case. And so we have actually a couple cases with DOJ and how they have been accessing these records, which frankly they should not be. Like the Congressman said, they do not have the background and the right background checks to go through. And so we did file one in particular about Social Security records, and we had a great win in that one where the judge ordered that DOJ must delete and disgorge every piece of data that was wrongfully seized. And so the decision required DOJ to return or destroy all private Social Security data that was accessed, recognizing that stopping DOJ is not enough to protect, that stopping DOJ is what we need to protect our Americans. And so we also have other cases that have stopped him from accessing records, which is we filed motions with the OPM records and then also with the Department of Labor statistics. These are all private records that no one that has been vetted should have. And so without our case, and he would be accessing Social Security records and more, and so we want to continue these. And that was a first in a ruling like that, and so we hope to continue seeing that on multiple fronts in our different DOJ cases.
Thank you, Mega. We did get the results back from our poll. Again, the question was, do you think Elon Musk, an unvetted DOJ employee, should have access to your information? Not surprisingly, 4% of you said yes, 95% said no, and 1% were unsure. And we had about 400 people respond to that poll. Thank you. Just want to remind a couple of reminders to press *3 to ask a question. Also, a reminder to press *6 to sign up for our newsletter. The next question we're going to go to is from Alan. I'm sorry, we just did Alan Bradshaw. From Matt from Rancho Santa Fe. Matt is asking. Let me see if I can get him online here. Matt, are you there? Okay, it doesn't sound like Matt is there, so I'm going to go to...
I am here.
Oh, you are. I couldn't hear you. I'm glad.
Sorry.
All right. That's okay. You are live right now with the Congressman. Can you go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, Congressman Peters, why don't you jump on the Trump train and be on the winning side and make America great again?
Well, thanks, Matt. If I thought he was making America great again, I would be all in. I think he's doing a lot more harm than good. Here's a guy who said he was going to lower our prices, and he's imposed tariffs. People in business don't know how to invest under those circumstances. People are going to be paying more for everything. There's threats to cut people's health care and Medicaid, all to support tax cuts for people that don't need them. The economy was booming when Trump took it over. Now he says he doesn't care if there's a recession, and he expects that there may be one. He says he doesn't care if the cost of a car is higher. Who voted for this? who voted for this? This is idiotic. He's also changed positions on Ukraine, and instead of standing up against, instead of this horrible dictator Putin, he's decided to team up with him, even voting with him at the United Nations. He's actually done so much damage. He's inspired an alliance in trade among China, South Korea, and Japan. Talk about way to lose friends. We went over to Central America recently, and we're trying to get countries to support us and trying to get the economies of places like Guatemala to have their better economies so people don't flee here. We're cutting the foreign aid that helps build those economies. We're trying to make friends with Panama, and we threaten Panama with taking their canal by force. So to me, it's not making America great again. It's making us look like a laughingstock, like an undependable ally, and like a petty monster. So no thanks. I'm willing to work with anybody to solve problems, but I have not seen that from the Trump administration. And if that's your idea of making America great again, I bet Americans would like a redo on that election. I think they'd probably be pretty surprised with what they got. I do think, by the way, that there are some things that Democrats have to get right on. I think we were probably not on the right side on crime. I think people they want criminals deported. I want criminals deported. I don't have any problem with that. But of course, that's not what's happening. We're deporting people who are law-abiding, people who are part of the economy, important components of our farm workers and home health care. That's also going to raise prices, and there's no plan. So, stupid is not thinking about what happens next, and that's what we're getting from this administration. We're getting a lot of let's try it and see what happens. By the way, and finally, I would just say we had a whole episode where where the Secretary of Defense and the National Security Advisor were letting a journalist know about an attack that was planned a few hours ahead, where the Secretary of Defense actually put the details of the attack out 2 hours ahead on an insecure communication, including a journalist. And by the way, what was the consequence for that? They said it was no big deal. So we have no confidence that they're going to stop doing that in the future. And this is not going to keep us safe. We got more calls from veterans who said if they did something like that, they'd be thrown in the brig, they'd be court-martialed. Of course, if Secretary Austin was having that communication with Vice President Harris in the Biden administration, it would not be no big deal on Fox News. So I don't know if this is what you wanted, but if this is what you wanted, I guess I humbly disagree. Marianne?
Thank you, Scott. We're going to go to another question from Constance in La Jolla. Constance, can you hear me? Because I think you should be live now.
Hi, I can hear you.
Okay, we can hear you. You're live on our town hall with the congressman.
Great. I had submitted a written question, but circumstances of the day have altered my question. But obviously this week and today especially, we've heard about massive cuts in personnel to the FDA, the CDC, and the NIH. And this was following massive cuts to research grants that have affected researchers both at UCSD and around the country. And one of my key issues for Representative Peters is to understand what can be done to ameliorate the absolute harm that this is doing to the public health and to the biomedical research enterprise of the United States. Both of these have been major areas of excellence for our country for decades, and to see it dismantled in this way is heart-wrenching.
Constance, I could agree with you more. And Mega, I'm putting you on notice that we may have a lawsuit question for you about this as well. But you're absolutely right. So I'm so proud of world-class scientific research that happens in our district, and there's two components to it. One is we invest about $50 billion in the probably $47 billion in the National Institute for Health, right? That's the public side investment. On the private side, we see over $100 billion of investment, taking that basic science that we do at places like Scripps Research, Salk Institute, UCSD, and turning it into therapies and cures. And it's the playbook that the rest of the world envies. We figured out how to do this in a way that the rest of the world envies. And in our district in San Diego, we drew in more than $2.2 billion from the federal government for scientific research in 2023. That's from the NIH and the National Science Foundation. And that turns into, by the way, $56 billion of economic output. That's more than the whole budget nationally of the NIH. That's wealth created by NIH and NSF investment in San Diego County. And it is insane for us to kill this golden goose. I was talking to, there's a couple things that they're doing. One is that they're trying to limit indirect costs, which are the costs of the machines and the expensive equipment that supports these scientists. That would create a huge hole in the budget of a lot of these organizations. They're also trying to cut NIH funding. These kinds of things are going to leave scientists unemployed, and they're going to decimate our world lead in biotechnology, which also, by the way, it's not just about healthcare, which is primarily about, but also about defense. We worked so hard in the last Congress to pass the CHIPS Act to bring back from overseas the semiconductor industry, an industry that we developed in the United States, in Northern California, that we let go overseas. And we have this industry, life sciences, that we developed in the United States, and we still lead the world, and China wants the business. If we don't invest, China's going to get it, and that's going to cost people a lot in terms of cures and jobs and security. So I'm horrified by this. It's very short-sighted, and I'd certainly like to make the case that we should continue to be smart about this because the returns are so great. Mega, did you have I think that there's a lawsuit about stopping funding for NIH. Is that right?
So we do not have it particularly at Democracy Forward. It may be one of our partner organizations. Now, we are looking at all of our options regarding this because, as we all know, that science is the way to progress democracy and to progress the nation as a whole. So we are looking at all of our legal options regarding this matter, and we will definitely keep the congressman's office apprised and him and make sure that you have all the accurate information if we do take any action in this case. Okay, thank you. Marianne?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mega. We're going to go to another question from one of our callers. We're going to go to Casey in Point Loma. Casey, are you still on the line, and can you hear me?
I can hear you, Marianne. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. We can hear you. You're live on our town hall with the congressman.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for the invite to join the call, and I hope you're well with all your challenges. My question is, where is the line in the sand with your fellow Republican colleagues in Congress when they're going to finally inflate their backbones and realize that they're not going to get primaried by Mr. Trump or Mr. Musk, but they're going to get primaried by their constituency?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's a great frustration to me. I mean, first and foremost, I'm disappointed in the Speaker not standing up for the Congress. I mean, he's the Speaker of the House of Representatives, not the Speaker of the Republican Party. He's not the Speaker of Trump. And, this notion that Trump would be able to do whatever he wants with the budget we all agreed to is an institutional one that I think Mike Johnson should attend to, but we haven't seen that. And we certainly haven't seen that from any of the rank and file. Here are the things that I think Republicans are going to be moved by. One is people who have farms are really struggling with labor. And the fear that's been created by the deportations, which I say again, Let's get rid of the criminals. Let's deport the felons. I'm 100% for that. But these farmers rely on farm worker labor to pick their crops and to get, as farmers point out to me, groceries food doesn't come from the supermarket. It comes from farms. And it's really going to make it hard. I talked to one of my Republican colleagues yesterday who has a lot of farmers. He says, they're willing to take it for the team for 1 year, for Trump, but they just can't afford not to have labor to pick their crops. And at some point, they're just not going to be able to sustain it. So they're going to hear that. The other big thing is Medicaid. If the Republicans follow through in cutting Medicaid. Now, look, just footnote. They say they're not going to cut Medicaid. But the amount of cuts that have been assigned to my committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, $880 billion to pay for the tax cuts that they want to do, will inevitably require us to go into Medicaid. We don't have that much money in other programs. When Medicaid gets cut, all hospitals will be affected, but rural hospitals in particular will be affected. And Medicaid is a huge issue for healthcare nationally. Even in my district, which is one of the more affluent districts, 1 in 5 people is served by Medicaid. In our county, it's 1 in 3, so 33%. But in one congressional district in California, 67% of people are on Medicaid for health care, and it's represented by a Republican. That guy can't vote to cut Medicaid. So I don't see how, as they work their way through this budget process and they try to come up with all these cuts to pay for this big tax decrease, that Republicans are going to be able to vote for it. It just doesn't seem possible to me. Finally, I would just say that before President Trump came in, there were a lot of people on the Republican side who were really concerned about the national debt. And I haven't heard a lot about that recently, but I do think that some of them swore that they came here to deal with the national debt, and I think they have to be feeling pretty squeezed by the choices they're going to have to make. So I think it's going to come. I guess finally I should say, you're right about voters. They're unhappy, and Trump's numbers have gone down significantly since he was elected. And it's those swing districts that determine who runs the House of Representatives that are in the target. The most right-wing Republicans won't be defeated, but a lot of the people in the swing districts are going to face a lot of hard questions and a lot of hard elections. So I do think it will come, but it can't come fast enough. Marianne?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. We're going to go to another poll question. We have several more questions waiting to go live, but I want to go to a poll question first, and then we'll go to one of the other questions that are waiting for us. This question is, how concerned are you that Trump's recent tariffs will raise prices for you? If you're very concerned, please press 1. If you're somewhat concerned, please press 2. If you're not concerned, please press 3. Again, the question is, how concerned are you that Trump's recent tariffs will raise prices for you? If you're very concerned, press 1. If you're somewhat concerned, press 2. If you're not concerned, press 3. Okay, we're going to go to another question that from one of our callers. This question is from Jackie Felton in San Diego. Jackie, can you hear me?
Yes.
You're live on our telephone town hall with Congressman Peters, Jackie.
Okay, I thought you brought me earlier, but my question is, I am concerned about Social Security, and how can he be blocked from touching my Social Security? I am 81 years old, and so I can't afford not to have my Social Security.
100%, Jackie. I think we hear that loud and clear from everyone. I'll give you a little bit of comfort and a little bit of longer-term caution. The Republicans need 60 votes in the Senate if they want to cut Social Security. That can't be part of this reconciliation process that they're taking advantage of for the budget. Social Security is outside of that. And I don't see any way that they get 60 votes because you need 7 Democrats to cut Social Security. And I also think Republicans are going to hear from people who are just in your situation, and they don't want to they don't want to touch that Social Security. I think even Trump's talked about it. So you're not alone. We have a critical mass of people to speak out on that and mobilize. And I sent a letter to the Trump administration demanding that they reverse course on slashing the workforce for Social Security, because you're going to find that when people aren't there to staff the offices, it's going to be really hard for you to resolve those issues. And so we'll protect Social Security. Now, I will tell you that there's a structural problem with Social Security, that in about 10 years, 10 years from now, the revenues will not be sufficient to cover outlays. And at that point, under current law, there's automatic 20% cuts. And that's if we do nothing. And so we have to get to work to save Social Security, and I want to do it without cutting benefits. The sooner we do that in a bipartisan way, the better it will be. But I don't think there's any way that you see cuts out of this Trump administration. We want a solution, not to take a hatchet to benefits.
Thank you, Scott. We're going to go to the results of our poll. Again, the question was, how concerned are you that Trump's recent tariffs will raise prices for you? About 350 people replied. More than 300 of you, or 89%, said very concerned. 8% said somewhat concerned, and 3% said not concerned. So 90% or 89% very concerned, 8% somewhat concerned, and 3% not concerned. We're going to go to a question from, sorry, I've lost. We have a question that was sorry, we had a question that was pre-submitted to us that I want to go to right now. This question is from Melissa in Carmel Mountain Ranch, and she asked, how can Democrats better articulate their vision for America beyond opposing the current administration?
That's a good question. We do, as Democrats, have to have a better vision. And we should start with voters have been telling us for a long time now, is that the cost of living is too high. And I think people perceive that we're not paying attention to that. I think we can do better. I do want a Democratic Party that's more committed to getting stuff done. I think that's the other thing we've heard, is that the Democratic Party is seen as a party that, this is what from polling, everyone may not agree with this, but we're not getting stuff done. And it's hugely ironic, because I think one of the great achievements in the Biden administration, or two of them, were the infrastructure bill, $1 trillion infrastructure bill for roads, bridges, rail, broadband, a huge amount to be invested, and the IRA, which made the biggest down payment on climate investments in the history of the world. But we had so much red tape and so much process that a lot of it didn't get built. Some of it's still not, even started. So as Democrats, we have to be more responsive, and we have to, if we're going to be the party of government, we have to be the party that makes government work and get stuff done. So, and then whether that's roads that need improvement or schools, Democrats have to do better in results. Now, I would say that all that is in contrast to how Donald Trump and Republicans have approached government this year. They seem to be interested in blowing it up. That's not what I'm after, but I do think we can do better. I also think we have to be the opportunity party. One of the reasons I'm a Democrat is because, very simply, my story is a profound story, but it's not that uncommon, is that I was able to go to college because of student loans. The federal government gave me a shot to go to afford college. And I will always be grateful that, I had to work my way through school, but I got loans, I got a work-study job, and it gave me the chance from a middle-class family, and my three sisters, by the way, to go to college and to have an amount of student loans that we could afford to pay back. It was that opportunity. I had to do all the work. No one guaranteed me a result, but I had a chance. And I think in today's economy, there's a lot of families out there that want their kids to have a chance, whether it's not just college, but trade schools or apprenticeships. Democrats have to be for that opportunity, and to make sure that, not that we're going to guarantee results, but that we're going to make sure that we're going to guarantee that you have a shot, a fair shot, to get ahead. And then finally, I think we have to, as I said before, we have to be really conscious of costs. The cost of housing in particular is out of control in San Diego and in the Golden State of California. And we've suppressed housing for the building of housing for 3 decades. We have to build a lot more, and I think Democrats have to be for that housing supply as well. Again, that's a matter of cost and opportunity for young people. We want California to continue to be a place where people not only want to live, we all want to live there, but where they can live. And to me, those are a few things that Democrats should stand for.
Thank you, Scott. We're getting pretty close to our hour mark, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time to wrap. But I just wanted to remind people to please press *6 to sign up for our newsletter. We send out a newsletter every week on Friday afternoons that gives a summary of the congressman's work throughout the week, both in D.C. as well as the work that's being done here in San Diego. If you need help with a federal agency, for example, you're having trouble with Social Security, or we had someone call today who had trouble communicating with the IRS. Those are the types of that's the type of work we can do on your behalf with federal agencies. So please press *6 to sign up for our newsletter, and you can get information about how to be in touch with our office if you need help working with one of the federal agencies, like I just mentioned. Scott, I'm going to turn it back over to you to give some closing remarks before we wrap up.
I want to thank Mega and also Joe Neguse for coming on and talking about some pretty important things. Thanks for your hard work, and Mega, I think you're still on the phone, and for the great success of your organization. It's really going to be important for you and for everyone to participate in defending our country and our democracy. I always say democracy is not free, and we fought a number of battles for our democracy over the course of our history. People have died in those battles. I hope people don't die in this battle, but it is a fight, and we need everyone's attention and care for this country. And so I'm really happy you all joined me today on Townhall. Please sign up for the newsletter. Like Marianne said, it will give you an update on what we're doing. If we can help you with a legislative issue dealing with the federal government, please call on us. But mostly, be engaged and keep us posted, particularly if you're suffering from things that the Trump administration is doing. We need those stories. So let us know what you're going through. And I know it's a difficult time for folks. People are angry. People are scared. People are uncertain. And we will try to provide as much information as we can and as much clarity and sanity through the course of the year. September 30th is when we do come up on the next budget deadline. I hope we do a good job of making sure we rationalize things by then. But the president has a lot of power, and we'll do what we can through the courts and the Congress to check the things that he does that are illegal, and to push back on the things that he does that are wrong. And again, thanks for joining us tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to represent the United States Congress.
Thank you, everyone. If you want to leave us a message tonight, you can stay on the line after this call. And a reminder also that if you're interested in future events like this one, the newsletter that I've been encouraging you all night to sign up for is a good way to get notification of these. So please stay on the line if you want to leave us a message. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you are well. Bye-bye.